Well, look, welcome. This is kind of a bit of an experiment. So it's the first time Claire and I have tried to get together to bring together the world of procurement and finance to try and talk about stuff. And we haven't even thought of a good name of it yet. I think we've sort of arrived at the Procurement and Finance Coffee Break, which is probably not that creative, but at least it describes what we're doing with the aid of coffee. And do you know why is it we're doing this? I think we basically just both agree that finance and procurement is about more than bickering about whether savings have been signed off or not.
Absolutely.
And we've kind of got a lot of experience in our respective worlds.
Yeah.
And we just thought, well, what would happen if we just brought it together and talked about the things that we've seen and the things that we think are going to matter to procurement and finance teams in companies big and small to see whether or not it could help you. So we're going to do a few. We'll see what you think. And if you like it, well, do you know what? We might even do some more. In fact, we might even come to you to ask what we should talk about next. So who are we? Well, Claire, do you want to go first? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Claire Green. I've worked for over a decade in finance transformation. Before that, I used to work in audit, and then, like most people, when they qualify in audit, I left audit, moved into industry, and became a financial controller of two different companies.
Right. Mine is probably equally random. So, Army officer for 14 years, then in and out of procurement, supply chain, financial services, into training, into McKinsey, back to procurement, and now working for myself. And I think safe to say, if you'd asked me when I was an Army officer whether I'd ever do procurement, I laughed at you. But as a little secret, I quite enjoy it. So what are we going to do in this first session? In this first session, what I wanted to do was ask Claire to talk about her experience in transformation. And I hope you're going to discover, I suppose, over the last 10 years, you've been involved in transformations across multiple sectors.
Yes.
Financial transformation.
Seen the good and the bad.
Good and the, well, we're going to hear about them in a minute. So look, I guess where I want to start is, you hear lots of things about transformations. It's about a new target operating model, or it's the stuff related to that. But in your mind, what is it you mean by kind of target operating model, and what is it a transformation is trying to do?
Yeah. So I think outside of the world of consultancy, the phrase target operating model may sound a little bit confusing, but actually all it is creating a vision of the future for the company that is linked to the company's strategy. Right. So, for example, if you was a technology company and your strategy was to be the leader in innovation in that type of technology, if you did an assessment of your people's skills and found out that actually only 2 in 10 of your people had skills for tomorrow, then you probably wouldn't be able to execute your strategy very well.
Right.
So creating a target operating model is essentially, I guess, consultancy speak for creating a vision, a blueprint for how you're going to execute your corporate strategy. And if you think about that, we typically look at a target operating model in 6 layers when we look to blueprint, and that's the functional processes that are in the scope of the transformation and the target operating model, the people that your company employs, what roles and skills those people have, like I just mentioned, the service delivery model, which is where work will be done. Is it going to be done in a shared service centre? Is it going to be done in a centre of excellence? Are you going to have people doing individual work in different countries? Where are people going to do the work? Then technology. What sort of technology are you going to use? So often when people think about embracing technology, they think about the technology of the day then. But what's important to think about is, you have a corporate strategy. Where do you want to be in 5 years' time, and where do you want to be in 10 years' time? And the technology that you use to achieve that vision, is it scalable? Is it using emerging technology?
Right,
So
and we're going to be talking about AI in a future
yes,
session. I
that's
think.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the other two layers to a target operating model are normally looking at performance insights and data. So you have a vision of the future. You're starting to break it down
Right.
into how you operate into these layers, and then performance insights and data is about saying, okay, what insights and data do I need to manage performance to see whether I'm actually getting to that future
Yep.
that I've painted a
Got it.
picture of. And then lastly, the other layer of a target operating model is governance. So we've sort of
Right.
talked about all the other layers. The governance piece is about how is all that going to be overseen?
Yep.
What risk and control frameworks do we need to make sure, we're operating effectively and within, compliance.
Okay, so there we go. As ever, first attempt at the webinar and a total technology failure. So if you see that subtle link between the first question and now, you know what happened. It all fell over. Right. I think we've now got a pretty clear view about target operating model, what it might mean, and do you know what, this is just as relevant to procurement as it is to finance, to any other function.
Yeah.
I guess what you've said, it's a description of how you're going to work in the future, but it is about the future, not just tweaking what you've got today.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we were going to zoom right in quickly, what would you say are the success factors, the things that make a transformation to a new target operating model work well?
Yeah. So I think it's important to state what transformation is about first before we get into the ingredients. Because transformation is essentially about creating value for shareholders of companies.
Yeah.
And making sure that the business that you have today remains viable in the future.
Yeah.
That example I gave in the previous question about, if you're a leading technology company and you want to be innovators in your field, if you don't innovate, fail to innovate, you're probably going to be failed to be around in the future, right?
Exactly, right.
So if we think of transformation as creating value to shareholders and keeping a business relevant, then we can think about transformation as essentially like a value chain, a value chain of activities that we're going to participate in order to create value for the company. And if we think of a value chain is normally sort of a chevron shape with key activities going into the value chain. And I think there's three key inputs to a transformation value chain. And that's essentially going, okay, well, the first one is, why are we changing? What's the force for change? Why do we need to change from where we are now to that vision in the future? And that can be lots of different reasons, right? It could be that the company has been on the acquisition trail, lots of companies, and they're all slightly operating differently, and now we need to conglomerate, have one global platform, one way of doing things. It could be that there's some new accounting standards or new regulations that have come in that mean that we need to adapt to that change. So one of the things to consider is, what is the force for change or the reason for change? And the next is, as I said, you need a vision of the future. What does the future look like? And then have a plan to execute that. So where are we now? Why do we need to change? Where are we going? And how are we going to get there, basically?
And then, hang on. That sounds simple.
Yeah.
But you and I both know there are lots of transformations which have failed.
Yeah.
So if you were going to come up with the three biggest reasons why a transformation goes wrong, despite having thought about all of those things, what would they be?
Well, I think it's the bottom half of a value chain that often goes wrong, or what I see often go wrong, because those first elements, the sort of why are we changing and where do we want to go, that's generally people are kind of get those things. But if you think about the sort of third element of the value chain, which is how is the plan that we're going to execute designed, and how are we going to implement that plan? Now, this is, in my experience, where it does frequently fail. I think it can often go wrong for a number of reasons. And what I think are the 5 key ingredients, back to your original question, is to have a successful transformation project, you have to have the right people with the right skills leading that transformation program. It's no use just picking someone randomly to lead that.
No.
Even if they're a good leader, they have to have the right skills.
Right.
The second one is use the right technology in order to perform that transformation. Adopt good change management practices. It doesn't matter if you're implementing the best technology in the world. If you don't tell people about it, if you don't skill them in it, and if you don't manage the change right, then it's not going to be a successful implementation. The other thing that I often see not have enough attention is the data involved in that program of work. If you put garbage in, you'll get garbage out, and often the amount of work that it takes a business to identify the data in scope, then transform that data so it will work with the new ways of working, often is frequently underestimated. And then that causes delays and budget overruns to a transformation program. And the other thing that, again, I see frequently go wrong is people will say, okay, we're doing a transformation project, we'll adopt, let's say, an agile way of working, doing it, or we'll adopt waterfall, or we'll adopt some hybrid technique. I think with implementations solutions, it's important to use the right horse for the right course. So
So in fact, the things that contribute, as you said, on the bottom half of the value chain to deliver success are actually the things that most commonly go wrong as well.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I want to pick you up on one thing, because you mentioned the word vision. And, there was a recent article, interview, former boss of IBM, Ginny Rometty.
Yes.
And, there's been a lot of discussion about IBM as a business, whether in adapting from what it used to be in the 80s to what it is now, whether it's done that effectively or not. And there are plenty of opinions on both sides. We're not here to criticise someone who's had a great job.
Yeah.
But one of the things that picked up, and in fact, in her interview, she talked about it, was the importance of that, as you mentioned, that vision.
Yes.
And I could get all military here and talk about higher commanders and tech, but actually, look, business then, why is having a vision so important? Because surely if we just focused on those things you've just said, plan, right horse for the right course, it would all work. So why do we need a vision?
So I think a vision is really important, because if you don't paint that vision, it's likely that your transformation project will deliver you somewhere else that is not where it is intended you wanted to go.
All right.
So if you do sort of a bottom up, you may end up in X where you actually intended to go to Y. So having the destination in mind, I think, is key. Otherwise, you'll probably end up somewhere
almost like
else.
A guiding star.
Yes, like a northern star, exactly.
Okay, right.
I think the other reason a vision is really important is, in most organisations, you've got, a group of stakeholders, all with their own possibly slightly different agendas of what they want to achieve. And if you don't align stakeholders around a common goal, so say, okay, our plan is to get to destination X, then it's possible that when you're on this transformation journey, you'll be pulling in different directions, get frustrated with each other, and not go very far.
Unifying. A vision unifies.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, look, we're nearly out of time on this one. So if I was just going to ask you one question, based on all of your experience, if you were going to sit down with a leadership team, procurement, finance, or anyone, and you were just going to give them one piece of advice to make sure their transformation worked, what would that be?
It would be to start with why. There's an author I follow called Simon Sinek, and you can Google him, but he talks about why in a business case.
Okay.
And I think if you don't know why you're doing something, again, you're probably not going to get to the destination you want to, because again, another thing that I often see happen is people go, well, I've decided I want to implement a new system. That's great, but it's not your reason for your business being, is it?
No.
Or I want to set up a shared service centre. Again, it's the how. It's not what it is you want to achieve with
Right.
your business.
Okay.
And you start with what it is you want your business to achieve, and then work backwards, and then what that means for transformation. That's going to result in something that's much better aligned to corporate strategy.
So if we came back, I suppose, to close the analogy, if that vision is the guiding star of the destination,
Sure.
it's about, actually, when you're looking into the distance, that destination, there are many ways of getting there, and you can choose which way, but you've got to be clear why you want to get there in the first place, or else
Exactly.
you're never going to get there.
Yeah. And because all these people working on a transformation project, if they don't know what they're going to make assumptions. So those assumptions could be wrong.
Right. Well, okay, Claire, thank you for sharing
Thank you.
your insights. And I suppose that brings to a close our first attempt at the, what are we calling it? The Procurement and Finance Coffee Break.
Yes.
And we're going to be looking at other topics. We're actually going to do a couple more. We're going to be talking in the future ones about impact of AI and ESG, which is actually something close to both of our hearts. After that, we're going to be coming to talk to you about what we might do next. But for now, and until next time, goodbye.
Bye.